Welcome to this webinar at Cambridge Marketing College. I'm Neil Wilkins, and I'm going to take you through something called the Rule of Thirds. And this is a topic, this is a technique that I've seen working for, well, I would say it must be now thousands, I'll say it, thousands of organizations, public sector, private sector, non-profits, commercial organizations, small, medium, large. Nobody has ever come back to me and said that the rule of thirds does not work. So I will very confidently say it's going to work for you. So what I'm going to do in this webinar is I'm going to talk you through the art of mastering the rule of thirds, which is about striking a balance in the content that you create. So this is going to apply to all forms of content. So this will be content that you're going to create for your digital marketing activities. This will be content for social media and more. So wherever you kind of want to communicate a particular topic, your brand, some product information, some service information, whether you want to get into sort of influencer marketing, whether you want to be blogging, vlogging, whatever it is, the rule of thirds has a part to play. So I'm going to share with you the technique, and then I'm going to talk you through some of the elements and ways and places that you can start to put this into practice. So this is going to be some very practical information. And the nice thing about the rule of thirds is that it is not rocket science, okay? And this is going to apply to both strategic and tactical content. So I just want to start by kind of really setting the scene, building the context of the difference between strategic content and tactical content. And you'll be able to then decide and translate how this works for you in your particular organization and your particular content needs. So identifying appropriate content strategically is all about getting attention and building brand. So strategic content is the longer term view. It's not about hooking in and just purely sort of driving sales or inquiries and engagement. This is all about positioning your brand. It probably is about showcasing some unique propositions that you may well have in the marketplace, some unique offers, so a core competency that you might have as an organization. It is definitely working within what you might term brand guidelines, and it's your strategic intent. So anybody engaging with your strategic content should know where your brand is headed. They'll know the values that you have as an organization. They'll understand your purpose, maybe the vision that your organization has within its function within the sector that you're playing in. So it's very much about strategy, longer term view. So that's one part of content. And of course, rule of thirds can apply there. And we'll go on to that in just a minute. Second part is tactical content. Now, this is what we tend to find we're using and building on a day-to-day basis. So this is more about your tactical goals, so goals within years. So you're looking here to put content out that drives engagement and potentially conversion. So turning the awareness that people have of you into some kind of decision or some kind of behavior. So within appropriate content for delivering against tactical goals, those short-term goals, the kind of content needs to play out across your customer's journey, the three phases of the customer's journey. So it's about building awareness, converting that awareness into a behavior or a sale, and then retention, retaining the customer's engagement and loyalty to build advocates and to then obviously get repeat business. So in tactical goals, it is all very, very sensitive towards the choice of media or the channels that you're going to be selecting, and you're going to be multi-purposing content. So a long form piece of content, be it a video or a blog, you're going to be multi-purposing. So you're going to be creating clips or creating reels or shorts or little sound bites from that content. So that's tactical content. So the rule of thirds that we're going to be talking about now plays out in both instances. So if you're tasked with creating brand, that's strategic. If you're tasked with generating leads and business, that's tactical. So the rule of thirds plays out in a beautiful sense in both areas. So that's where we're going to go now. And there is no coincidence, really, that it is the rule of thirds. According to the De La Soul lyrics, you may well remember, if you've heard the song by De La Soul 3, it's the magic number. There is a kind of a real magic around the number 3. And this, when I very, very first came up with the rule of thirds, it was very much something that I was seeing patterns via a particular colleague, Jim Hardcastle, who was working with me at the time. We were doing a lot of sessions and a lot of consulting and a lot of kind of uncovering, if you like, of different sector patterns. And we were seeing with our clients and the people we were working with that 3 as a number just kept reappearing. And so we found that it was appearing everywhere. It was appearing in content. It was appearing in getting just striking balance in things like photography and art. I mean, we're both very much into, as we have been since, looking at kind of photography, looking at really successful artwork and thinking, why does that just feel balanced? And it was because of the rule of thirds. It was a number that was really becoming very evident that if you can balance a photograph that you might take, or something that just visually appeals when you look at the layers of a painting, for example. You might have the foreground, the middle ground, and the distance. And generally, an artist is going to balance those 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And so it's not by accident that this stuff really works. It's a visual balance and gives you a sense of comfort. So there is something very natural in the number 3. And it's very different to every other number. So this was kind of, it set us on a bit of a trail, if you like, to wondering how we might use this within marketing. And we found that actually it does work very, very successfully, particularly when we tested it out in social media. So in social networking, the balance of the 3 core content elements gave us a really simple, but highly powerful flow of balanced engagement that just seemed to hook people in, keep them sweet, keep them engaged, and help them to do things. So was born the rule of thirds: personal, point, promote. I'm going to go into each of the 3 elements of the rule of thirds so that you really fully understand it, because as I said at the start of this, you will find this will work. There's just something magical about it. It wasn't like we created it, it was like we uncovered it. And that is how I've seen this play out with literally thousands of organizations and thousands of people. If you do a search on rule of thirds in content creation or social media, you'll find now a lot of the big communicators, a lot of the platforms like HubSpot and Hootsuite have written articles and have advocated this rule of thirds. So it is everywhere. It is not something that we've protected. We've just released this thing out as a discovery into the wild. And a lot of people are now using personal, point, and promote as a balance for their content. So what does it mean? So personal, the first of the 3 Ps of the rule of thirds. Personal adds personality to your marketing. So what we're meaning by this is that 1/3 of everything you publish should be about getting to know you. Okay, so this is the personal bit, getting to know you. So you being yourself, your team, your company, or your brand, and you can decide. Okay, so very much for you to decide what personal you means. So you've got to play it back to you as an organization or you as a marketer. So the more you can make it personal about people, the more effective this third will be. It's vital in both service and product-driven organizations that the people behind the organization are seen by the audience as real, authentic, and true. Okay, so if you are a product-driven or product-centric organization, or you're driven by the processes and that kind of thing is really at the core of your content, then bring the people involved in those things into the mix. 1/3 of everything you publish should be about getting to know the people within and behind your brand. The second third is point. This is where you inform, educate, and entertain your target audience. So 1/3 of your content should be pointing. So what we mean by that is, it's another P, of course, but what we mean in reality is signposting to current relevant and informed content that adds value to your audience's experience. So if you intimately know your audience's needs, wants, desires, and habits, in other words, if you've created a clear and defined audience persona, then publish highly relevant third-party content for them. Now, this is nothing to do with you. So this is a big leap for many marketers and many organizations. This is meaning that 1/3 of the content you publish is not about you. Okay, so think about that for a moment. If you've been talking about yourself, if you've been limiting yourself to it's all about us, then you've become predictable. The 1/3 that is point, signposting to third-party information and data and articles and videos, this makes you unpredictable. There's nothing worse than talking all the time about yourself and your products and services without interspersing it with thought-provoking things that add true value. And we know that, how many brands do you follow and then unfollow because all they do is go on and on and on about their own stuff, what they're doing, how great they are, how they're the most professional, the most positive, the most amazing brand, but they don't add actually any value by doing that or through that. So point informs, educates, and entertains your audience. And I'll share with you some examples in just a moment where that can come into play. Final third in our rule of thirds, personal point promote, is promote. So this is using social media potentially as a tool to promote your products. As I say, this applies to all forms of content, so it can play out everywhere in any way that you want it. But what we mean by the promote P in the rule of thirds is that 1/3 of what you publish can be overt promotion of your products and services. So if anyone tells you that you shouldn't be using places like social media for promotion, then I can tell you that they're wrong. You can, but, and here's the caveat, only if you've already added great engaging value with the other 2/3. So that's the key here. When you start to think about personal point and promote, it is about making sure you're doing these in roughly equal measure. Otherwise, if one gets out of balance with the other, in other words, if you were to do all point and then not get to know your team or yourself or your brand, the people behind it, and you weren't then optimizing that attention to then promote your products, you'd be missing a trick. Or if it was all about promotion, well, I don't think you'd have too many followers because they wouldn't know who you are and you wouldn't have added any value. And consequently, if you just do the personal, talking about all the amazing stuff you do as people and the amazing people that you are, and then you don't add value by broadening that out and giving a broader information context through point, and then you don't use again that attention to promote the value that you can bring to them if they engage with your products and services, again, you're out of balance. So it is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So if you're doing, let's say, you were to look at your last, and I often use Twitter or X as it now is, x.com example, because it's just really, really simple. If you were to look back at your last 30 tweets, for example, on x.com, you should see 10 of them rather, will be getting to know you. 10 of them will be third-party content that you've reshared or retweeted or reposted, and then 10 of those should be around promoting the value that you bring through products and services, relationships, and engagement. So when you look back, if you're slightly out, it really doesn't matter. This is overall trying to strike the balance of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Now, sometimes the question then arises, okay, Neil, but we don't really do a huge amount in socials. We do newsletters. So we send a lot of information out by email. So how does it apply there? Well, the answer would be similar, but subtly different. So within a newsletter, for example, you would have all 3 Ps in one newsletter. So one of the 3 articles in the news post that you're putting out on your email newsletter would be about getting to know some of the stuff that's going on with the people within the business. 1/3 would be probably signposting or showcasing to a third-party article or a blog that was related to that particular audience you're sending it to. And then 1/3 is, hey, have you seen this new product that we've just launched? So you would do that within one newsletter or one bulletin. So you can flex it, you can move it, you can adapt it. But the key here is balance. So the first thing to do is very much look back at what you've done recently and just see if you can find if there's a balance, or if you can find if you're skewed in one direction or other. Now, you might find there's other types of content, but most content you'll find will be able to be categorized into one or other of those three areas. Now, some of the content you'll probably do, you could say, well, it's a little bit personal, but it's also a little bit promote. Then you've got to make a call as to which of those three pots it goes into. Be absolutely ruthless when you do this, and then you'll see clarity. Because if it isn't really clear, it's going to be very hard to then evolve where you are to where you want to be, which is this beautiful balanced position of personal, point, and promote. Now, before we get into the good examples of how you can then start to do this in practical sense, I just want to give you an example of where this might be falling completely out of sync. So, for example, can you think of an organization, maybe a recruitment company? Again, we'll use the X.com example. So a recruitment agency who is all about putting people into jobs, so finding people jobs and filling jobs with appropriate applicants. If they have an X.com, formerly Twitter account, and they're doing this wrong, can you imagine what that account would look like? Job, 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 job. All the posts that you would see would be job, 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 job. So if you're not looking for a job, are you following that account? Well, clearly the answer is going to be no. But could they add value to you as a potential job seeker at some point if, using the rule of thirds, they helped you to understand the team behind the brand? Now, maybe some of the people are doing really interesting charity work, or maybe they've got an interesting thing going on within the office that you could get to know and maybe do yourself. With the point, maybe they could be sharing salary surveys or job or career advice. And then, of course, 1/3 of what they promote there through their X.com posts could be promote. So they could actually put a few roles and jobs in there, again, whetting your appetite just in case you might happen to be looking. So if they were to look back at a really successful recruitment X.com account, they would see these three P's of the rule of thirds beautifully balanced. It would not just be, we've got another job, we've got another job, we've got another job. And of course, we see this everywhere. A lot of organizations do this. So how do the organizations who have taken the rule of thirds and thought, right, this sounds like it makes sense, I think I'd like to follow an account that was doing that, how do they then take their first steps in doing this? Well, it is very, very simple. So the first thing that they do is they use their target persona as filters. So whilst you have got a rule of thirds as a technique or as a framework, the way you roll that out is going to be different for each of the personas that you address. And here's one that I've been using for the last, well, it was about 18, could even be 20 years ago now, where we first came up with this as a model. So let's just say this is nearly 20 years old, this particular example. We were doing some work with the British government. So we were looking at some persona exercises with what was called UKTI, so UK Trade and Industry. It's since been rebranded, renamed. But they were doing some work to try and really engage with potential exporters who were not big corporates. So organizations, very small, so micro businesses who they could provide export advice for. So we were going deep into a persona creation exercise, and we were using Pinterest. And this is, again, something that you might want to consider in terms of building your persona to be able to then do the rule of thirds. And we created a persona. So I'm going to share two with you. The first one was Nick. And you can see Nick there just in the middle of the screen, surrounded by Nick's world, because as we were going through building the exercise, we were kind of building up the real life of Nick. So you can see him there with his man bag. You can see him, he's very casually dressed. He looks very approachable. He's just a genuinely nice guy. He's got a micro business. He's based in a rural setting in the southwest of England. He kind of encounters a whole bunch of things in his life. He likes real ale, he's out hiking, he's got a bike, so he cycles. He's just decided to get some chickens, so he's getting eggs on a daily basis there. He's got a young family, so he's got a partner, and he's just kind of trying to grow his business. And so we kind of built this persona around him. But can you see what's happening as going through this exercise of creating the persona? We're beginning to identify and kind of open up little opportunities, because there's an image there towards the bottom right-hand side of the screen of Totnes. And so we thought, well, he's actually probably based somewhere in or around a place like Totnes in South Devon. So what's going on in Totnes that we could sort of get into his kind of onto his radar through? And we found that there's actually farmers market in Totnes. And so what we were doing is we were saying, okay, you've got this micro business, but it's related to exporting, and it was actually exporting cheese. He was an artisan cheese maker. And so what we were doing was kind of posting content and things around the kind of lifestyle that goes on in and around Totnes, including things like farmers market. Now, of course, farmers market is nothing to do with UKTI as the organisation, but it was signposting. So instantly there, we got to do the point rule of thirds. So there was a little article, there was a little social post there. Eden Project as well was another one. So there were a number of kind of eco initiatives going on at the time at the Eden Project, a little bit further south down in Cornwall. And so we were signposting some of those to Nick, and really building this kind of rule of thirds content strategy around personal. So really the personal stuff, so cycling, so, things that some of his local advisors and consultants at UKTI in the region, we found one actually that was a cyclist. And so we were kind of publishing some of his kind of weekend rides. So you can kind of get to know some of the people behind the service. We were then doing the Eden Project and Totnes Town Centre events to kind of do the signposting. So that was the point. And then, of course, the promote was all about the services that UKTI had that was supporting and helping small businesses just like Nick's. So a very simple kind of little example, which hopefully kind of brings that to life. And there was another one. There were many, many personas that we created going through this particular project. But another one, just to show you that there is no one single rule of thirds for an organization. They had another persona. And so what you're needing to do is really think about the rule of thirds on a persona by persona basis. So this was Ella. Now, Ella has a very different strategy in business, and UKTI had a similar offer to her, but were positioning the world of UKTI very differently. It was very much more aligned with her kind of sharp dressing. She's very much into brands. She was very much into lifestyle and where she lived. She was living very much harbourside living, sort of a very contemporary apartment space. She was a single person who was very career driven, etc., etc. So building the persona of her lifestyle around a very, very different model. So of course, again, a very different rule of thirds. So identifying people or peoples within UKTI who would be very instantly identifiable by Ella as being relevant, or people like her. So again, telling their stories and how they work and what they're up to. So Ella can then identify with them. Very different person supporting Ella than the person supporting Nick. So again, thinking at this kind of persona level allows you to develop those little nuances, if you like. So we worked then on building the content plan. So very much kind of mind mapping those opportunities, using things like Pinterest to kind of build those kinds of moments of discussion and conversation. So, we weren't doing that exclusively for UKTI. They were taking this in-house to be able to kind of roll some of these initiatives out on a long-term basis themselves. So it was very much about building the team around these personas and around the rule of thirds. So everybody had a part to play contributing to the strategy. So it was really fun. So we were doing storyboarding, there was some flow charting and some evidence-based scheduling. So I just want to give you a flavour of the kind of things you could do if you chose to take this on too. Again, using the rule of thirds, mind mapping is a really, really good way of doing it. So get the flip charts out, get out the sticky notes and start to use, the sticky notes to just download ideas. This was something that I came up with, which was a content marketing planning kind of mind map that I searched out. And again, this can be a really useful thing for just enabling you to kind of strike the balance with rule of thirds on a number of different levels. So you can be looking at a longer term sort of content plan. You can be bringing that down to a more sort of annual or even quarterly basis. You can then start to be kind of, mapping out the moments that you want to identify against, things like product launches and service availability, events that you might be hosting, webinar series, or whatever it is that you're looking to do. So making sure that the rule of thirds kind of dovetails in with the commercial things in your content plan already. So by getting that out onto the flip charts, that's a great starting point that enables you to begin to bring some commercial reality, if you like, to your rule of thirds activities. Next thing that's worth doing as well is storyboarding. So when you get some ideas here, it is all about just literally building, as you can see in this example, the story. So this might be a story within a particular newsletter, for example, or it could be that you're writing a blog and you want to take the audience, the target persona, using the rule of thirds, balancing it beautifully with all of these little nuances that come out of personal, point, and promote within the article, but you're actually storyboarding the article. So you make sure you get to a very, very clear endpoint or destination. So the call to action obviously needs to be super clear as you take them on this journey, because when you start to use the rule of thirds in this kind of way, you find that it gives a lot of depth and breadth to a particular quality of a story, but it can almost give a little bit too much so the audience can feel, actually, where are we going with this? Hold on, you've told me a little bit about you. You've kind of given me a link out to a third party thing. Hold on a minute, I thought I was here to talk about this or that. So bringing them back with a clear call to action by using a storyboard allows you to keep control over what's going on. And just building on that control, certainly flow charting allows you then, particularly if, like we were with UKTI there, you're involving multiple people in the process. So this is all about making sure that if you've got a sign-off process, for example, in your organization, that people know the rules that you've set up with the rule of thirds. So they know the reason why you're telling this story about this particular person. So when the content sign-off comes and content approvals come, it's not really a surprise, the fact that you're using this third-party article or you're showcasing this video that's way outside of the boundaries of your own organization. So when people challenge and say, well, hold on a minute, I thought this was meant to be about us, you're actually signposting to something out there, well, we can't control that they already know in the process that you're following the rule of thirds. And because it is such a simple, such a logical, such a natural balance of content, people understand it. So you just need to take a leap of faith in some ways, but trust me that the rule of thirds is a very easy thing to convey very quickly if you use some of the examples that I've been quoting for you here. And then, of course, it's about taking this thing live, taking this thing out into the market. And so then you're going to be using evidence-based scheduling. So you'll do all the usual things you would do with your content, making sure you're doing it on the right day, at the right time, making sure that, you know, it's just well balanced for the audience. So you're sending it to them or you're publishing that post in that particular social channel at the right time because you're basing it on the insights that you're getting back. So, for example, if you use Meta Business Suite because you're posting on Instagram or Facebook, then that will tell you and recommend when those times are. And obviously other social networks do similar. So it's that kind of thing that you need to be still following. So the rule of thirds is not taking away from anything else that you're doing that's really good, but what it's doing is it's supercharging the balance of what you put into those channels and when you do your publishing and why. Now, there's a bonus here. If you do this stuff and if you schedule at the right time, on the right day, for the right persona, for the right reasons, using the rule of thirds through the channels that they're to be using, then you will get this bonus, which is what we call user-generated content, UGC. This is where others, and ideally, obviously, it's the personas you're targeting, start to create content around the storytelling that you're doing. And I've seen countless examples here where the rule of thirds has triggered off UGC campaigns where you've got a hashtag strategy. So you've got this new product or service launch. So you're pushing this particular message out there, and you're owning, in lots of ways you can't own, but you know what I mean? You're kind of taking accountability for a particular hashtag, maybe one that is so specific it could only apply, and hopefully this will be the case, only apply to you in this particular campaign. When you start to use the rule of thirds with a hashtag strategy, so all the content that goes out has this, really used well, sort of really consistently used hashtag, you will find that people will begin to use it and generate user-generated content that aligns with your content that you're pushing out there. So this is ultimately very shareable seeding into your audience to encourage engagement and potentially help some of your posts and some of your content go viral. To me, I've only ever really, I think, seen, if I'm really looking at this, forensically, I've only ever really seen viral content happen when the rule of thirds balance has been followed. It is very, very hard to go viral if you're talking just about yourself. Now, you could say, well, what about influencers? The Kardashians of this world, that's all they do, talk about themselves. Okay, occasionally they'll, advocate another brand or something like that, but invariably they're talking about themselves. But that's not who we are, is it? That's not what we are doing. So we're here talking, yes, to micro influencers within our sectors, but if you can be using the rule of thirds to balance your content, to be using and thinking about a UGC strategy, using hashtags, creating ultimately shareable content with the rule of thirds always in mind, then you stand a very, very good chance of making content that it has the chance or has the potential to become viral. Even if it is viral with a lowercase v, that is probably more effective than most of the content that you're producing right now. So there's a huge opportunity here. And I just want to kind of really sum up. I said that Hootsuite and HubSpot have been writing about this. Well, from a Hootsuite article from a while ago, they've given some really good advice, which built actually on everything I've been talking about here, which kind of really sits nicely in with the rule of thirds. And basically what it's saying is that make sure when you're doing captions, for example here, describing your visuals or drawing attention with a statement, a question, or a headline will get the most clicks, particularly if you're keeping it around 150 characters or around 15 words. So that seems to be, and it's a very well researched, if you're looking at Hootsuite numbers here, they are talking about millions of examples to get this evidence, okay? So we know this stuff just works. But you've got to find your own version, much as in the rule of thirds and the personas. So you can be doing that. Think it as well, when you're using the rule of thirds, if you're slightly averse to using emojis for the right audience in the right channels, you've got to be careful. You don't want to overdo it, but including relevant emojis to add tone and visual interest, those can apply within the rule of thirds. They do work, but just be careful. Again, to the wrong audience, that'll be a turn off, but to the right audience, again, it just gives those little nuances and that little extra context. Call to action, I've mentioned this 2 or 3 times here, and this is so important. Asking a question to encourage comments or share a link to invite audiences to learn more, try, or buy. So ending your rule of thirds content with a question mark rather than a full stop encourages people to come back with a response. So you're looking for advocates, you're looking for conversation, and you're looking for engagement. It's not just one-way traffic. So even though I've kind of made the rule of thirds almost sound a little bit like it's a one-way flow, it's a bit of a monologue, it's not. You can actually integrate a call to action that inspires people to engage by finishing on a question mark, as well as thinking about that full stop. Mentions, we know this works really, really well. Mentioning other accounts for added visibility and reach is likely to get you more shares. Obviously works more in certain social networks, but it seems to be working. If you're in B2B, it seems to be working very, very well now as a strategy within LinkedIn. So think about the people you need to almost become advocates of the content you're producing. And again, particularly with that point P, this kind of you being the center of a particular topic or subject, this is where thought leadership comes into play. So if there's a particular subject or topic that you want to be identified with, making sure that you're tapping into the others in your industry or in your communities by mentioning them in your posts, particularly when it's that rule of thirds point P, that can also increase the reach. So that can be really, really good. So we know hashtags can work really, really well. And all of this really does apply not only to the written word. I've kind of implied it's all about the written word with the rule of thirds, but it also applies to video and imagery as well. So you can be thinking of this as a multiple media, multi-channel, multi-persona exercise. And just having that balance, personal, point, and promote in mind all the time, so that you don't just get too skewed towards selling. You don't just get too skewed towards talking about yourself. And then you don't just fall into the lazy trap of just resharing everybody else's content. You do still have to come up with some of your own. But those are the kinds of things that you can start to do to really gain real advantage here. So remember, the content rule of thirds applies to both social networking and all other forms of digital marketing, like your website and your email newsletters. So you can pretty much use it everywhere. So the next time you want to write, blog, or email all about yourself, just stop and think again about the rule of thirds, because 3, I will guarantee you, really is the magic number.